Quilla, can you at least fight back?
No. Why she not fighting?
At least something. At least fight back, something.
Get up, bro. Get up.
Less than 24 hours after that moment, Shanquella Robinson was dead. She was 25 years old, a business owner from Charlotte, North Carolina. She went to Cabo San Lucas with 6 people she trusted. They all came back alive. She didn't. Her family was told it was alcohol poisoning, but Mexico ruled it a violent death. An arrest warrant followed. The FBI opened a federal investigation. There is video of her being beaten, and yet, 3 years later, no one has been criminally charged in the United States, not one arrest, not one indictment, not one extradition. How? How do you have a viral assault video, a homicide ruling, an international warrant, and still end up with nothing? On the surface, this should have been simple, but it wasn't. And the reason it wasn't is far more unsettling than most people realize. Tonight, we're not debating what happened in that villa. We're asking a harder question. Why hasn't anyone been charged? Before there were headlines, there was a life. Shanquella Robinson was 25 years old, from Charlotte, North Carolina. She wasn't famous. She wasn't reckless. She was building something. She braided hair. She ran her own boutique. She talked about expansion, about growth, about the future. Her mother called her baby girl. Her friends called her Quella. She was the kind of person who posted business updates between selfies, work and laughter in the same breath. And when that Cabo trip came up, it wasn't random. It was a birthday celebration, a quick getaway, a luxury villa, a private chef, 6 people she knew, 6 people she believed were friends. She packed for a weekend. She never unpacked at home. She came back in a casket. At first, her family was told it was alcohol poisoning, too much to drink, a tragic accident, something that happens on vacation. It sounded awful, but it sounded explainable. Her mother believed them. Because why wouldn't she? These were people who had laughed with her daughter, traveled with her daughter, shared rooms with her daughter. No one expects danger from inside the group. But small things didn't sit right. The tone of the calls, the lack of emotion, the details that felt incomplete. Still, grief can quiet suspicion until paperwork arrives. And what was written there did not match what they had been told. That's when something shifted. That's when confusion became something sharper. Because if it wasn't alcohol poisoning, then what was it? And why didn't they say so?
It don't take that long to get naked. It don't take that long to get naked, hoes. Where y'all at? She told me I'm gonna keep it hot. You gonna keep it hot? What?
I'll give my hot bathing suits that I don't want to wear because it's cute as fuck.
What Go said, they croup.
Yeah. The ones that's like mediocre is in my chains. I can't wear them.
For days, the case sat in uncertainty, conflicting stories, a grieving family, a vague explanation about alcohol. Then the internet did what it does. A video surfaced. It was recorded inside that Cabo villa, inside a bedroom, inside the same space where Shanquella Robinson had spent her final hours. The clip is short, but it is enough.
Okay.
Quilla, can you at least fight back?
No. Why she not fighting?
At least something. At least fight back, something.
Get up, bro.
You see a woman being struck. Repeatedly, she is not dressed, she is not defending herself, she is not throwing punches back. A voice in the room termed as her best friend can be heard urging her to fight. She says no, she doesn't resist. She absorbs the blows, and others are present, watching, filming, speaking. No one steps in, no one physically intervenes in the clip you just saw. The woman being assaulted was identified as Shanquella Robinson. The woman striking her was identified as Dejane Jackson, one of the 6 people who traveled with her to Cabo. At the time, she was part of that group. Later, she would change her name to Amani Green. But in that villa, in that moment, she was one of the 6. Now, the video does not show what happened afterward. It does not show the full day. It does not show the exact moment of medical decline. But what it does show is this. There was violence inside that villa. And according to the official Mexican death documentation, Shanquella died hours later. You should note that detail matters, because proximity in time creates assumption. If a person is assaulted and then later dies, most people connect those two events automatically. It feels obvious. It feels linear. It feels like cause and effect. When the video went viral, public reaction was immediate. Outrage spread fast. Commentary accelerated. Pressure mounted. At that point, most people believed charges were inevitable. There was footage. There was a death. There were witnesses. It seemed straightforward. They were wrong. Make sure you're subscribed and stay with this channel because this was where the case took a shift. When the official findings from Mexico were released, they did not align with what Shanquella's family had been told. The document listed a cause of death, severe spinal cord injury, not illness, not intoxication, an injury to the spine. Then another phrase appeared, atlas luxation. That's the point where the skull meets the first vertebra in the neck, a dislocation at the base of the head. That does not happen from simply drinking too much. The report described violent trauma, not a fall, not a fainting episode. Trauma. And Mexican authorities responded accordingly. They opened a criminal investigation. They did not treat it as a tragic accident. They treated it as a homicide. Then came the development that shifted everything. An arrest warrant was issued for Dishani Jackson, the woman seen in the video striking Shanquella. Her name was now attached to a criminal allegation in Mexico. For a moment, something changed. Public anger turned into expectation. Justice felt close. A warrant means a judge reviewed evidence. It means a prosecutor believed there was probable cause. It means a government was prepared to move forward. Justice was coming. At least, that's what it looked like. By the time that warrant was made public, Dishani Jackson, along with the other members of the group, was already back in the United States. They had returned home, and once they were on U.S. soil, everything changed. Mexico cannot simply cross a border and make an arrest. A warrant inside one country does not automatically become handcuffs in another. From that point forward, this was no longer just a homicide investigation. It became an extradition question. An extradition is not driven by outrage. It is driven by treaties, evidentiary thresholds, and federal review. So the warrant sat. Not dismissed, not withdrawn, just unexecuted. And that is where people's hope began to fracture. Because if Mexico believed there was probable cause, and the United States had the people named in that warrant, why didn't an arrest follow? The answer is procedural. And that procedure is where this case begins to slow down in a way the public did not expect.
We just heartbreaking how we seen a video of her being brutally beaten and no one has been arrested yet. Someone should have been arrested right after the video was released. Amen. But unfortunately, that this Shanquella, no one has done anything about it. No one helped her when she was in there being brutally beaten. They telling her to just fight back, fight back. Someone should have had sense enough to step up and help her. Or stop the fight, but they didn't. They continued to watch it and laugh and killed my child. And I need justice for somebody. Yeah. Somebody need to be arrested for this. I found out through a phone call. I got a phone call saying that, and really, when I got the phone call, they were saying she was alcohol poisoned. She wasn't responding. Really, Shanquella it wasn't no such thing as alcohol poison. Later on, when the video came out, they called me lying, even came to my house lying. Didn't know that a video had been leaked out.
Let's take a moment to analyze the Cabo Six. Young, educated, connected to Shanquella through school, social circles, shared history. They were not strangers pulled from the internet. They were not random tourists. They were part of her world. They laughed in the same villa. They ate at the same table. They recorded inside the same rooms. Then they came home. All 6 returned to the United States. Alive. Without her, there was no joint statement, no coordinated press conference, no public gathering where they stood together and explained what happened, no unified sworn account presented to the public. At least one of them did visit the Robinson family in the days after. At least one sat inside that grieving home. But once the Mexican death certificate surfaced, communication changed. Calls slowed, then stopped. When medical documentation contradicted the alcohol poisoning narrative they put forward earlier, the explanation shifted. None of the 6 publicly acknowledged the fight before the video went viral. The doctor who responded to the villa was reportedly told she had been drinking heavily. There is no public indication that the altercation was disclosed to medical personnel at that time. They insisted she was just dehydrated. If medical providers do not have the full context, their decisions are shaped by incomplete information. The doctor at the scene reportedly advised transport to a hospital. According to documentation, it did not happen immediately. They refused on taking her to the hospital. Eventually, emergency services were called hours later, but by then the outcome could not be reversed. After Shanquella's death, her belongings were returned to her family, suitcases, clothing, personal items, but not clarity, not alignment, not a shared consistent timeline under oath. No criminal court in the United States has convicted any of them. No charges have been filed federally. Legally, they remain uncharged individuals. That distinction is important. But absence of charges is not the same as absence of questions, and the questions remain. When Shanquella's body was returned to North Carolina, another examination was performed. Another autopsy. Another set of medical conclusions. But then something else started to surface. The Mecklenburg County Medical Examiner did not report a broken spine. The vertebrae were described as intact, no dislocation at the base of the skull, no structural separation where Mexico had documented one. Instead, the finding shifted. A hematoma on her forehead, swelling of the brain, signs consistent with hypoxic injury, a lack of oxygen, and then the phrase that changes everything. Cause of death, undetermined. Pause. Undetermined. Not confirmed as homicide under U.S. standards, not confirmed as an accident. Undetermined. 2 countries. 2 autopsies. 2 different mechanisms of death. One says catastrophic spinal trauma. The other does not find that trauma at all. And this is not a small technical disagreement. This is the foundation of a criminal case. Because in court it is not enough to show violence occurred. The prosecution must connect that violence directly to the death. If medical experts disagree about how the death happened, what does that do to a jury? What does that do to a prosecutor deciding whether to file charges? What does that do to the standard of proof? It introduces doubt, and in a criminal courtroom, doubt is not something to be taken lightly. Now, disagreement between medical professionals does not automatically erase accountability. It does not mean no crime occurred, but it fractures certainty, and certainty is what criminal charges depend on. If one autopsy says her spine was violently dislocated, and another says it was intact, a defense attorney does not need to prove innocence. They only need to amplify that conflict, that crack in the narrative, that gap in agreement. And suddenly, what felt inevitable begins to look complicated. If medical experts cannot align on the mechanism of death, how does a prosecutor prove causation beyond a reasonable doubt? We'll get there. When most people first saw the footage, the reaction was immediate. There's a video. That's proof. And emotionally, that makes sense. We see violence. We hear impact. We witness imbalance. In everyday life, that feels conclusive. But criminal court is not everyday life. In a U.S. courtroom, prosecutors do not charge based on what feels obvious. They charge based on what they can prove. Not just that an assault occurred, but that the assault caused the death. Beyond a reasonable doubt. That phrase matters. Beyond reasonable doubt means eliminating alternative explanations to a degree that convinces 12 jurors unanimously, not morally, legally. The video shows Shanquella being struck. It shows force. It shows others present. It shows that she did not fight back. What it does not show is the precise injury that led to her death. It does not show the exact moment of fatal trauma. It does not show internal damage. It does not show the medical mechanism that stopped her heart. It does not show oxygen deprivation. It does not show spinal separation. It does not show causation. And causation is everything. A prosecutor would have to stand in court and say this act, in this moment, caused this specific fatal injury, and then defend that claim against experts who may disagree. If one autopsy says catastrophic spinal trauma, and another says the spine was intact, a defense attorney has room to question timing, room to question mechanism, room to suggest alternative explanations, even if those alternatives feel unlikely to the public. The law does not operate on likelihood alone, it operates on proof. If jurors can be shown two medical opinions that conflict, if they can be told that the exact fatal injury cannot be pinpointed with certainty, reasonable doubt begins to form. Not because the violence wasn't real, not because the loss wasn't devastating, but because the legal standard is unforgiving. The video shows what happened inside that room. It does not conclusively show what happened inside her body. And that distinction, however frustrating, may be the difference between outrage and indictment. So the question becomes quieter now. If the video isn't enough, what would have been? Up to this point, the focus has been on evidence, the video, the autopsies, the uncertainty. But there is another layer that quietly shapes everything. Geography. Shanquella Robinson died in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. The people who traveled with her are American citizens. That combination creates a legal intersection most viewers never have to think about. A death in one country, citizenship in another. And criminal law does not automatically travel across borders. Federal homicide statutes in the United States do not simply activate because Americans are involved overseas. There are limited circumstances where U.S. law applies abroad. This case does not neatly fall into those categories. So when Mexico classified the death as a homicide and issued a warrant for Dejane Jackson, that was a Mexican criminal action. Just to bring her back to Mexico for prosecution, the United States would have to participate. That process is diplomatic. It begins with a formal extradition request, then review, then analysis, then alignment of probable cause standards, then an evaluation of whether the evidence presented would support prosecution under treaty obligations. And here's the part that feels cold. The U.S. does not extradite based on outrage. It extradites based on prosecutable evidence. Not viral videos, not public pressure, not social media campaigns. Evidence that satisfies legal thresholds. Evidence that would likely survive challenge in court. If American officials review a foreign warrant and conclude that the evidentiary record contains internal conflict, if medical findings are inconsistent, if causation is debated, they are permitted to hesitate. That hesitation does not mean the death was unimportant. It means the threshold for removing a U.S. citizen from U.S. soil is high, higher than most people realize. So now frustration builds in a different direction. Mexico signaled readiness. The United States reviewed. And somewhere in that quiet review process, momentum slowed. No public arrest, no extradition, no courtroom in Cabo, which leaves a lingering question that no press conference fully answered. Was the issue a lack of evidence or something else?
Federal prosecutors will not bring charges in the death of Shanquella Robinson. That announcement coming just minutes after federal authorities met with Robinson's family at the Charlotte FBI headquarters. In a statement from the U.S. Attorney and the FBI, the Fed said there was not enough evidence to bring charges.
After months of review, the U.S. Department of Justice announced it would not bring federal charges in connection with Shanquella Robinson's death. No indictment, no arrest, no prosecution. The statement was brief, clinical. Federal prosecutors concluded that the available evidence did not support pursuing federal criminal charges. Insufficient evidence to prove a federal crime beyond a reasonable doubt. That sentence feels procedural, but it lands like a door closing. Now slow down here. Because this part matters. That decision does not mean nothing happened. It does not mean violence did not occur. It does not mean no one bears responsibility. It means something narrower. It means federal prosecutors were not confident they could win. And prosecutors do not file cases they are not prepared to win. Not at that level. Because if they bring charges and a jury acquits, double jeopardy applies. That case is over, forever. You do not get a second attempt. You do not get a do-over. One loss can close the door permanently. So federal prosecutors weigh more than outrage. They weigh risk. They weigh evidentiary fracture. They weigh whether 12 jurors will unanimously agree. And in this case, they stepped back. When the federal government stepped back, the Robinson family did not, because when prosecutors say insufficient evidence, that may close one door. But it doesn't quiet a mother. In late 2024, Salamandra Robinson filed a wrongful death lawsuit in North Carolina. Not criminal, civil, which means the rules change, the burden drops. Not beyond a reasonable doubt, just more likely than not. And that difference matters, because civil court has something criminal court does not. Compulsion. Phone records can be requested, text messages can be subpoenaed, travel confirmations examined, depositions taken under oath. And once you are under oath, silence becomes more complicated. Then something unexpected happened. One of the men who traveled to Cabo, the one who arrived later, spoke publicly. He contacted a podcast. He said he wasn't there for the fight. He said he didn't know about the altercation until the video went viral. He said he was told it was alcohol poisoning. He described arriving at the villa and finding Shanquella already sick, vomiting, disoriented. He said he laid her on her side, that he stayed with her, that he believed she was suffering from drinking too much. He also described a late-night argument between Shanquella and Dajanai before the fight. A broken glass, a cut foot, tension. He suggested that may have escalated things hours later. Now, none of that has been tested in court. None of it has been verified under oath publicly. But it shifted the atmosphere. Because for the first time, someone from inside that villa was talking. And talking changes risk. If depositions move forward, if statements conflict, if timelines don't align, those contradictions become part of a legal record. The lawsuit is active. It has been remanded back to Mecklenburg County Superior Court. Discovery is expected to proceed. As of now, no trial date has been formally announced, which means this is not over. But here's the part that steadies the room again. Civil court does not equal prison. It does not produce criminal convictions. It does not create a record of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It can assign liability. It can award damages. It can expose contradictions. But it cannot incarcerate. So while the civil pressure rises, the criminal question remains. And for many watching, that may not feel like justice at all, or what do you think? So we come back to the question that has followed this case from the beginning. Why has no member of the Cabo Six been criminally charged? The answer is not simple, and it is not satisfying. It is structural, it is legal, and it is uncomfortable. It is not because nothing happened. It is because what happened has to be proven in a specific way. First, causation. Mexico's autopsy described severe spinal injury. The U.S. autopsy did not confirm that finding. Two medical conclusions, two different mechanisms of death. When experts disagree on how someone died, prosecutors lose clarity, and clarity is what convictions are built on. Second, the precise medical mechanism remains disputed. Was it spinal trauma? Was it blunt force injury leading to oxygen deprivation? Was it a combination? In criminal court, my ambiguity becomes leverage for the defense, not emotionally, strategically. Third, jurisdiction. The death occurred in Mexico. All individuals involved are U.S. citizens. Federal homicide law does not automatically extend overseas in ordinary circumstances. Mexico issued a warrant, but extradition requires alignment. Alignment of probable cause. Alignment of evidentiary standards. Alignment of prosecutable strength. Fourth, intent. An assault is not automatically murder. Prosecutors would need to prove not just that violence occurred, but that the violence caused death, and that it meets the mental state required under the applicable charge, intent, or reckless disregard at a level defined by statute. That is a high threshold. Fifth, prosecutorial strategy. Federal prosecutors do not bring cases they believe they might lose, because if they bring charges and a jury acquits, double jeopardy applies. That door closes permanently. So they measure risk, they assess evidence, they anticipate defense arguments, and if reasonable doubt is visible before a case is filed, they hesitate. And in this case, reasonable doubt is built into the record. 2 autopsies, unclear mechanism, jurisdictional limits, extradition complexity, competing narratives. In criminal court, doubt protects the accused, even when the public has none. Let that sit with you for a moment, because outrage does not convict, evidence does, and evidence must be cohesive, not fractured. Now here's the part that matters. The absence of charges does not equal closure. The civil case continues. Discovery may surface new information. Testimony under oath may reshape timelines. Legal pathways remain open in theory. Justice is not always immediate, and sometimes it is not linear. This case is not necessarily over. So I'll leave you with this. What have you learned from this case? About friendship, about silence, about how fragile certainty can be once it enters a courtroom. If you were in that villa, what would you have done? If you were a prosecutor reviewing that file, would you file charges or would you hesitate? Drop your thoughts below, share this video so this case doesn't fade, and subscribe if you want deeper breakdowns into cases like this. Because some cases don't just test the justice system, they test how well we understand it. And this one is still being written.